Welcome to another exclusive interview on VVIP. Today we have a special guest, the Secretary-General of IIMSAM, His Excellency Remigio Maradona. And today we're going to talk about a very critical topic, which is malnutrition and humanitarian activities.
Yes, before I do that, I would like to thank you for having me on VVIP. And I appreciate very much that you are interested in this topic.
So the first question, which is like everybody for sure want to know more, what is IIMSAM?
IIMSAM, it's an intergovernmental organization composed of member states. It is intergovernmental means it was formed either by a charter or a treaty that is composed of member states. The United Nations itself, it's an IGO, an intergovernmental organization composed of 193 nations around the world. So this is an IGO. IIMSAM is composed of several member states from around the world, and it is our treaty acts as our charter, and our mandate is it's very simple: is to attack the number one killer in the world, acute malnutrition, with a food supplement called Spirulina platensis, which the United Nations knows very well and has endorsed during their Food International Conference of 1974. They called it the best food for the future. But we need to promote Spirulina quite a bit more so it can become a household name, so we can start at least making a dent on the war against malnutrition.
So tell us like how actually you start IIMSAM, like back to the time. So how you went to that experience,
Yes. First of all, I started my humanitarianism with the city of New York. I was in the social programs of the city, providing homeless people with alternative living space. Then I switched over to protective services for adults, which is the protection of senior citizens in the city of New York. So most of my life I've always been revolved around humanitarian activities for a living and pro bono. The way I got to the United Nations was I was invited to be an intern by Dr. Hope P.Y. Davis. She was my mentor and continues to be my mentor, although she passed away in 2010. May God bless her soul. She taught me everything about some aspects of international law, IGOs, NGOs, INGOs, and so forth. And so I joined her organization, the alma mater of the United Nations, the World Association of Former Interns and Fellows, which was set up by Dr. Hope in 1977 and became an NGO, part of the UN, as an alumni association. And I was with her from 1984 till about 2004 or 2005. After that, I began working on a small program called Spirulina program, which became a treaty registered at the UN, and then it was led by a man which I respect very much, Dr. Manini. And from there on, I made it into an active IGO with actual programs. And we started in 2009, but of course before that we spent a lot of time in the formation of the UN within the Council, the Economic and Social Council of the UN, Article 74 and 54, I believe, which is for IGOs. And we spent 2 or 3 years just to get the observer status at the UN. And I won't go into details, all the sacrifice we made to to accomplish that, it takes a long time. As you can well know, we have to deal with 193 states and 54 states of the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. So it's not easy. People think it's easy to form an observer, or to get an observer status at the UN, but it isn't. It requires a lot of lobbying. It requires months, sometimes years, because you have to get everybody to agree that if there's a veto, or if there's somebody that doesn't like you, you have to start all over again.
Okay. So actually, you mentioned like the malnutrition, it is the first killer disease in the world, okay?
According to UNICEF.
According to UNICEF, So, because people really, when they hear the word spirulina, they don't understand what spirulina,
Yes.
So, maybe you can give us more depth, about spirulina.
Brief, even though spirulina has a long history. Spirulina is basically, I'm not a pundit in spirulina. We have people that can, maybe you should interview some of our pundits in IIMSAM about getting the specifics of spirulina, but I can tell you in a nutshell that spirulina, it's a microalgae. It basically grows in alkaline countries, meaning desert countries or lake countries around the world. It's been around for a long time. It's part of the Earth's formation. It's billions of years old as the Earth. And what it does is it's the highest protein source in the world that we know of. And it helps, it's very effective against malnutrition because it's very easy on the digestive system, and it begins to repair all the damage that has occurred in the victim due to lack of food and nutrients. Spirulina has a lot of nutrients and a lot of vitamins, and therefore it's the perfect choice to combat malnutrition worldwide. But the production of spirulina is very limited in the world. I think it's around 200,000 tons. You cannot eliminate spirulina with 200 tons being grown around the world. So therefore, we spend more than half of our time in advocacy and in introducing spirulina to strangers and to people that might help to make spirulina a household word. It's basically it needs basically a massive educational campaign and a massive media cover to make spirulina popular, even though it was a very popular supplement in the socialist countries. And in 1960, it was the favorite food of Fidel Castro, the favorite food of the socialist countries in South Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia. In Latin America also, Peru has experimented with it. The Incas used to use it as an energy source. There's evidence to show that it was spirulina that they use, and in Mexico also. Mexico is the father of spirulina. A lot of spirulina was used in Mexico in the 60s, late in the 50s, 60s, and the Aztecs. It was a primary food for the Aztecs in Mexico. It was very popular in the 1970s, 1960s, and then it went off the charts. I don't know why, but it became virtually unknown. But in the last 15 years, I would say, has started a revival with the New Age people in California and especially in the United States. Most of them are using spirulina. You can go and Google spirulina, and you will find a million online outlets all about spirulina, how good it is, and so forth. But our main task, from our point of view, is to use it to battle this number one killer in the world. 800 million people are hungry in the world. There's no excuse in the 21st century that while we're sending men to Mars, to the moon, we're conquering space, yet we have 800 million people starving on Earth. This is a way of getting back the attention not only into spirulina, but also that we must eradicate malnutrition. We have been saying that for decades. But the problem is that there's never any sufficient funds to end it. We could end it in a few weeks if all the nations of the world had a will to do this. But there's no political or financial will to do this. So the struggle continues decade after decade after decade. We have 800 million people now. We have lowered the figure though. It used to be over 1 billion a few years ago, but now we're down to 800 million, and it's one of the top goals of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So if not the most important, you know.
So, Your Excellency, in your opinion, what is how we can actually eliminate like malnutrition?
Malnutrition, of course, theoretically can be eliminated. The problem that I see, this is my own personal opinion, is that in order to eradicate malnutrition, you would have to have a complete worldwide effort. Same kind of effort that was done to virtually 99.999% to eradicate polio, which has been done. The same disease that affected me, illness that affected me when I was 2 years old, and many millions of people. Polio was one of the worst threats ever for humankind, particularly in the 1950s and the 60s, late 40s. But now it has virtually eradicated from the face of the earth. Very few countries have small amounts of cases now. I think Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Nigeria have some pockets of polio. But primarily we can say that no one has to worry about polio anymore. Same thing we can do with malnutrition. With the difference in malnutrition is that the delivery mechanisms, the financial efforts have to be in coordination. Everybody has to be in coordination. And everyone has to be guided by the Sustainable Development Goals and advised by the United Nations how to do this and have the budget for it.
Also to talk about polio, you know, because just to mention to our viewer, Remigio is a good example about resilience, because he's one of actually the few, you know, disabled like Secretary-General in the UN, and for sure there is a like strong story behind it of rejection, because this is something really people want to know about the story,
Yeah.
how actually you go that far.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I got polio when I was 2 years old. I'm not going to go into personal details, but my case was very rare around the world because polio, in generalities, first it attacks the lower extremities, and usually you get the illness in your lower extremities. In my case, it was the upper extremities that affected my arms, of course, and I had 7 operations in New York to reconstruct my arms and so forth. And thank God for New York City. It shaped my life in a different way. If I had stayed back home, and it took a lot of effort. I went to school. I finished intermediate school. I finished high school. I got my BA. I have later around I got my master's degree, and later on, as I said, the beginning of this interview, I joined forces with Dr. P. Hope White Davis, a very dynamic Jamaican woman who created the United Nations alma mater, WAFUNEF for short, the acronym. And I started working within the halls of the UN with WAFUNEF, and I learned many things. At the beginning, towards my initiation there, I applied for a job in many agencies, but I was turned down. I'm not going to go into details, but part of it was being a disabled person. But now it has changed, thank God. In 2006 and so forth, we had the Convention on the Rights of Disability, which I was very much involved. I was representing the Republic of Vanuatu at one point and then I switched over to the Republic of Chile. I was an advisor to the mission of Chile on the disability issues. And I got a chance to work in the committee, and it took us a few years to get it through, and now the Convention on the Rights of Disabled People is now being signed by over 170 countries, I believe.
Yes, also there is something special about IIMSAM that I would like to highlight, which is like the Goodwill Ambassador program. You have a lot of like high-profile people, celebrity actors, you know, and people from the multi-fields actually promoting the cause of IIMSAM, you know. And also recently we see some also like artists, musicians. So it's kind of like how you find this important actually to empower the voice of IIMSAM, and how that can be actually helping the cause.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I figure out how to bring forward the IIMSAM, the intergovernmental organization, in the use of microalgae against malnutrition, I figure I took some very good scenarios from UNICEF. As you know, UNICEF is the largest agency of the UN in the world that deals with children. And it's an amazing agency. It's been around since the middle 1950s. And they had very good luck with Danny Kaye, the first Goodwill Ambassador in UNICEF. He promulgated the public relations campaign for UNICEF. By using the Halloween holiday of the United States, and it became, as we know, the giant agency that it is today, and it's a household word name. For IIMSAM, it's a different story. IIMSAM is a small intergovernmental organizations, but we are proud of what we have accomplished with literally no funding. The only way to do this was to approach VVIPs, celebrities, sports figures, and so forth. And I think we have done a good job, but we could do much better. Sometimes the challenges were very great, in-house and externally. Because when you think out of the box, IIMSAM is an organization that we basically do many things out of the box. So when you're out of the box, many people don't like that. And they challenge you on it. And some people get jealous. But for IIMSAM, there's no other option than to be out of the box, because we are dealing with a supplement that very few people know it around the world.
I think also you witness the changes of the generation, you know, before the internet and after the internet, how now the people are, the world actually more connected, you know, and it's easy to deliver the message. In your opinion, how you think that we can use this technology and this influence of social medias, Instagram and Facebook, or other like website to actually empower the message to fight malnutrition, you know, and make it a bigger impact, because we are actually connected right now, 24/7.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, my opinion on the internet is the following. I didn't grow up with the internet. I'm not a millennial, although I wish I was. It has a positive and it has a negative. It's a double-edged sword. I think the internet can be an extremely useful tool for an organization like IIMSAM. If it were not for the internet, I don't think nobody would know us, because we don't have the money to spend on campaigns, media. We cannot hire a media agency from New York to make us known. So the internet is our only option. And that's what we have been doing now for 10 years. So in our case, thank God there is an internet. But the internet has an ugly side, which is a lot of negativity, You can be easily attacked, fairly or unfairly. They can ruin your career. They can ruin your organization. I think the internet needs to be regulated. I think it has reached the point where the negativity outweighs the goodness of it. And if we don't do something, and also private information is given out, as you know.
The Cambridge case.
Yes, the Cambridge case. Also, the huge fine to one of the major internet providers for giving out information. So these negativities are hurting the internet. Plus, you have a whole new generation now, young kids that don't play. I used to play when I was a kid. I used to go out in my backyard and do my exercise, playing football or whatever with my friends. And now kids just play on iPad games. So this is not very healthy for the very young generation. So I think the internet's judgment still is forthcoming. But I think at some point it will have to be regulated, because there's just too many abuses and too many negative things in the last 5-6 years. It's unbelievable.
So which actually more affected zone right now, or place at IIMSAM are mainly active at the moment, you know? We want to know about some staff at IIMSAM already helping people.
Well, we have distributed with very limited funding. And when I say very limited funding, I mean very limited funding. As you know, we have the Sheikh Zayed free distribution of Spirulina since we opened it on April 25th, 2009. The first few months we had to educate the county of Kisumu on what it is, Spirulina. Took us time to do that, because at the beginning people are reluctant. If they haven't heard it, they are reluctant to take it. But in the case of the Sheikh Zayed Center, we had to improvise, you know, and we have done a great job. We have distributed over 1 million dosages of Spirulina. We have served thousands of kids in Kisumu, and in 2016 our zone was declared malnutrition free.
There is something really special about traveling many cities around the world, meeting leaders. So what is the lesson behind this like?
Yes, at the beginning, when I was studying IIMSAM and towards the middle, I met over 50, 60 leaders of the world. I didn't have to travel because they all come to the UN in September. So this was my chance to meet all of them. I met many presidents from many countries, and they were very acceptable to Spirulina and our program, and they were very supportive. If they were not, I wouldn't be doing this interview now. You know, if I didn't have the support for IIMSAM politically and from the different leaders that I've met around the world. But it is the problem, as I said before, although you might have some leader that wants to, let's say, eradicate malnutrition in his country, but the funding is not there. The infrastructure is not there. So it's not just to go out on the field and give food to the people. You have to have an effective delivery system, which up to date, many countries don't have it.
So the end question of this interview, where, Your Excellency, you see the future of IIMSAM? Like, what are you gonna see like IIMSAM in the next 5-10 years? You know, what is your ambitions?
Well, I compare IIMSAM to what UNICEF was at the beginning. I see a lot of positive things with IIMSAM, and hopefully one day it can become a well-known agency affiliated to the UN or autonomous as we are. It doesn't make a difference as long as we are helping people. I see a lot of opportunities, and as I said before, the internet is a catalyst in this aspect. And the technology is only going to get better, and it will be very good for organizations like IIMSAM to compete with the heavy hitters around the world.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for this exclusive interview, because we learn a lot about the malnutrition and how actually this is impact the world. I would like to invite all our viewers to visit IIMSAM website to learn more about the organizations, which is imsam.org, and also follow them on all social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitters. And if you have any questions regarding IIMSAM, you can send us an email, or you can actually contact IIMSAM directly. We would love to hear your feedbacks and comment, and make sure to subscribe to our channels and waiting for more interview. So thank you so much, Your Excellency.